The stars stretched endlessly across the black sky, like silver rivers flowing through the universe. Among those stars drifted a small alien ship, battered by storms of cosmic dust. Inside that fragile ship sat Arinel, a woman from a distant world. Her skin shimmered faintly with blue light. Her eyes carried the glow of sadness, and her heart was heavy with silence. Arinel had wandered alone for many years. She was different from her people, and because of that, she had been cast aside. In her society, every woman was expected to continue the bloodline. Every woman was expected to give birth and strengthen the clan, but Arinel had been told she could not bear children. To her people, she was broken. To her people, she was worthless, and so they had abandoned her. The years of loneliness carved deep scars inside her. She traveled from one system to another, always searching for something, but never finding it. She looked for a place where she could belong, but every planet felt cold. Every market where she traded supplies was filled with eyes that looked at her with suspicion. Every face reminded her that she was an outsider. On this journey, fate took a cruel turn. Her ship, already weak, was struck by a storm of burning meteors. The metal screamed, the walls cracked, and alarms echoed through the cabin. Arinel fought to keep control, her fingers pressing on the controls with desperate speed. But the ship was falling, the engines died with a final shiver, and she crashed toward the surface of an unknown world. The impact was violent. Dust and smoke rose high into the night. Sparks flew from broken wires. Arinel's body ached with pain, her vision blurred, and for a moment, she thought this was the end. Alone, wounded, and stranded on a planet she did not know, she whispered a farewell to the stars. She had no reason to expect kindness here. But life often changes when least expected. The next morning, a human named Daniel walked across the fields of his farm. The sun rose behind him, painting the land in gold. He was a simple man, broad-shouldered and quiet. His life was filled with hard work, crops, and silence. He had no family of his own, only endless days that repeated again and again. That day, something strange caught his eye. In the distance, a trail of smoke rose into the sky. Daniel frowned. He lived far from the nearest settlement. No one came this way. He tightened his jacket, grabbed a tool for safety, and began walking toward the smoke. As he stepped closer, the scene came into view. A broken ship lay half-buried in the dirt. Its metal skin was cracked, glowing faintly with heat. Sparks hissed from its sides. Daniel's heart raced. He had never seen anything like this. Stories of aliens had always felt like myths. But here, in front of him, was proof. Then he saw her. A figure crawled from the wreckage. Her body trembled, her skin glowing faint blue beneath the sunlight. She looked fragile yet strong, alien yet human in shape. Her eyes, wide and filled with pain, locked onto his for a long moment. Both stood frozen, two beings from different worlds, staring across the silence. Arinel's breath was shallow. She expected fear or hatred. That was always what she found when others looked at her. Her voice cracked as she spoke, her words weak but clear. "Help me." Daniel's grip tightened on the tool he carried. He could have turned away. He could have run back to his farm and locked the door. But something inside him stopped him. In her eyes, he did not only see an alien. He saw loneliness. He saw pain. He saw the same emptiness that lived inside his own chest. Slowly, Daniel stepped forward. He lowered his tool and offered his hand. "You're hurt," he said softly. His voice carried no anger, no fear, only concern. Arinel hesitated. Her people had taught her not to trust others. She had been betrayed, rejected, abandoned, but the warmth in his eyes broke through her doubt. With a trembling hand, she reached for him. Their fingers touched, and in that simple moment, something changed. Arinel felt the weight in her heart shift. She had fallen from the stars, broken and unwanted. But here, on this lonely farm, a human stranger was willing to help her. Daniel guided her away from the wreckage, his steps steady, his arms strong around her weak frame. "Come," he said, "you'll be safe in my home." Arinel looked back at the ruined ship, the last piece of her old life. The smoke curled into the sky like a farewell. She did not know what awaited her with this human. She did not know if she would survive. But for the first time in many years, she felt a spark of something she thought lost, hope. And so, the alien woman and the human farmer began a story neither of them had expected, a story that would change both their lives forever. Daniel led Arinel across the fields. His farmhouse stood at the edge of the land, small but sturdy, built from wood and stone. The wind carried the smell of soil and crops, and the sound of birds echoed in the distance. For Arinel, every step felt heavy. Her legs trembled from weakness, but she refused to fall. She had lived too long with pride to collapse in front of this human. When they reached the door, Daniel pushed it open. The inside was simple, a wooden table, 2 chairs, shelves filled with tools and jars. A small fire burned in the hearth, filling the room with warmth. To Daniel, it was just home. To Arinel, it felt like another world, a place where silence was not cold but peaceful. Daniel guided her to a chair. He poured water into a cup and placed it before her. "Drink," he said gently. Arinel stared at the cup. The clear liquid shimmered in the light. She lifted it slowly, her fingers shaking. The first sip burned her throat with life. She had not realized how thirsty she was until that moment. "Food," Daniel muttered. He opened a cabinet and brought bread and stew. The smell of herbs and meat filled the air. Arinel blinked in surprise. Her own people rarely shared food with strangers. Yet here, this human placed the bowl in front of her without question. She hesitated before eating, then took a small bite. The warmth spread through her body. She felt alive again. For a while, silence filled the room. Daniel sat across from her, watching without fear. His eyes were calm, steady. Arinel could not understand him. Most humans would have shouted, or run, or pointed weapons, but he did not. Instead, he only asked, "What is your name?" Her lips parted. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "Arinel," she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "I'm Daniel," he said. The names lingered in the air like a bond forming between two worlds. Arinel lowered her gaze. She wanted to keep her distance. She wanted to leave once her strength returned. Yet something inside told her this man was different. He had no reason to help her, no reward to gain, and still, he had opened his door. Days passed. Arinel rested in the small farmhouse. Her wounds healed under Daniel's quiet care. He gave her space, never forcing questions, never demanding answers. He showed her how to grind grain, how to boil water over the fire. He let her sit outside at night and watch the stars without interruption. It was a rhythm she had never known, a rhythm of peace. But the peace was fragile. At night, Arinel woke from dreams of her past. She remembered the voices of her people, whispering cruel words. Broken, they called her. Useless, she could still hear the sound of children laughing in villages where she was not allowed to stand. In those moments, her chest tightened, and she felt the weight of loneliness again. Daniel noticed. He found her one night, sitting by the window, staring at the fields. "Bad dreams," he asked quietly. She did not answer at first. Her pride fought against the words. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she saw no judgment, only patience. Slowly, she whispered, "I was not wanted among my people." Her voice cracked. "They said I could not give life." Daniel said nothing. He simply sat down beside her. His silence was not cruel. His silence was comfort. After a moment, he said, "A family is not only blood." Arinel turned her head sharply. The words struck her heart like lightning. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not even in secret. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, this human saw her not as broken, but as whole. Still, her fear remained. What if others discovered her here? What if humans hated her as much as her own people had? She kept her distance from the village, hiding whenever travelers passed. Daniel never forced her to go outside. He only said, "You're safe here." And somehow, she believed him. One evening, the sky burned red with sunset. Daniel took Arinel to the fields. He showed her the crops, the way the soil held life. He placed seeds in her palm and guided her hand to the earth. "This is how you grow," he said softly. With care, with patience, Arinel stared at the seed resting in the soil. A strange warmth filled her chest. For the first time, she touched something that felt like creation. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Even I can make something grow." Daniel smiled. "Yes," he said, "you can." That night, Arinell lay awake in the small bed Daniel had given her. She looked at the wooden beams above. She thought about the seed, about the fire's warmth, about Daniel's quiet eyes, and for the first time in many years, she did not feel cursed. She felt human. But deep in her heart, she knew peace never lasted long. Somewhere out there, her people would come searching. Somewhere in the shadows, fear and danger still waited. For now, she had found safety in the arms of one human farmer, but destiny was still writing the next chapter. The days turned into weeks, and Arinell slowly grew stronger. Her wounds healed, her steps became steady, and her voice no longer trembled when she spoke. She still carried the weight of loneliness inside, but Daniel's quiet presence gave her something she had never felt before: stability. Daniel was not a man of many words. He worked the fields from dawn until dusk. But he always left a place for her at his table. He never forced questions about where she had come from or why she carried such sadness. Instead, he showed her small things like how to sharpen a tool, how to feed the animals, how to watch the sky for changes in the weather. These lessons were simple, but they made her feel useful, and that feeling was rare for her. Arinell, in return, began to share small parts of her own knowledge. She showed Daniel how to mend broken wires using scraps from her ship. She explained how stars could be read for direction. She even repaired his old radio, which had not worked for years. Daniel listened quietly, amazed at the wisdom hidden inside her calm voice. For him, she was not just a guest, she was becoming part of his life. One evening, as the sky turned silver with moonlight, Daniel returned from the village with supplies. Arinell watched him unpack the bags with curiosity. "The people," she asked softly, "do they know I am here?" Daniel paused, his hands stilled on the bag, and then he shook his head. "No," he said, "it's safer this way." Her chest tightened. She had expected that answer. She knew humans might fear her as much as her own kind had. Still, the thought of hiding stung like a blade. She looked away, whispering, "Always hidden, always unwanted." Daniel's voice broke through the silence, calm but firm. "Not here," he said. "Here. You are wanted." The words struck her heart again, and though she tried to remain strong, her eyes burned with tears. Daniel did not move closer. He only let her cry in the quiet. His respect was stronger than any comfort he could have offered, and in that silence, Arinell felt something fragile growing between them: trust. But shadows were never far away. One morning, while Arinell worked near the edge of the field, she heard the distant sound of voices. Her body froze. She crouched low behind the tall crops, watching as two villagers passed along the dirt road. Their words carried through the air. "Strange lights fell near here weeks ago." One man said, "Maybe wreckage, maybe worse." The other replied, "If it was an alien, we need to know. Can't let danger live among us." Their voices faded, but Arinell's heart pounded. Fear clawed at her chest. She rushed back to the farmhouse, her steps uneven. Daniel found her inside, trembling. "They're searching," she whispered. "They will find me." Daniel's jaw tightened. He set down the tool in his hand and looked at her with steady eyes. "Let them search," he said. "They will not touch you here." His words were firm, but Arinell could see the tension in his shoulders. She realized he was not only protecting her, he was risking himself. That night, she could not sleep. She walked outside under the stars, her thoughts heavy. The shipwreck still lay hidden in the distance, half buried by soil and weeds. She wondered if leaving would keep Daniel safe. She wondered if running again was her fate. Daniel stepped out quietly and joined her. He did not ask why she stood there. Instead, he handed her a lantern and said, "Come." He led her to the edge of the field, where rows of young crops pushed through the earth. The lantern's glow lit the tiny leaves, fragile yet alive. "You helped plant these," he said. "They grow because of you." Her throat tightened. She stared at the small green shoots. For so long she had believed she could never give life. Yet here, with her own hands, something had grown. A memory of her people's rejection rose again. But Daniel's voice cut through it. "Arinell, you are not broken," he said. "You are more alive than anyone I have ever met." Her eyes widened. The words left her speechless. She turned toward him, and for the first time, she allowed herself to smile. It was small, fragile, but real. Daniel's lips curved faintly in return, and in that moment, the distance between alien and human felt smaller than ever before. Still, the danger outside grew. The villagers were whispering, and rumors spread like fire. Arinelle felt the storm coming. But in Daniel's presence, she also felt something stronger than fear. She felt the beginning of belonging. She felt the seed of family. And though she did not yet know it, this fragile trust was about to be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. The farmhouse was quiet, but inside Arinelle's heart a storm raged. She had found safety. She had found trust, but the shadows of her past clung tightly to her soul. Every smile Daniel gave her felt like sunlight, yet she feared the moment he would see the truth that had once cost her everything. One evening, as the fire glowed warmly in the hearth, Daniel placed a kettle over the flames. The smell of herbs filled the air. Arinelle sat near the table, her fingers tracing the wooden surface. Her thoughts were heavy. For days she had hidden the truth, but the weight grew unbearable. At last she whispered, "Daniel." He turned, his expression calm as always. "Yes," he said. She lifted her eyes. They shimmered with fear and pain. "There is something you must know." Daniel placed the kettle aside and sat across from her. His silence invited her to speak, but did not pressure her. Her voice was fragile. "My people abandoned me, not only because I was different, but because I could never bear children." The words cracked as they left her lips. Her eyes fell to the floor, shame pressing heavy on her shoulders. "To them, I was broken, a failure. They cast me out, and I have wandered ever since." Daniel listened quietly. His face held no shock, no disgust, only steady understanding. Arinelle braced herself for rejection. Her heart pounded as she whispered, "If you wish me gone, I will leave tonight." But Daniel's answer was not what she expected. His voice was firm, carrying strength yet kindness. "Family is not only born, Arinelle. Family is chosen. Family is built through love, not only blood." Her breath caught. The words echoed in her chest, sharper and brighter than any blade. Her eyes lifted to his, wide with disbelief. "You do not see me as broken?" she asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. "I see you as strong, stronger than anyone I have known." For the first time in many years, Arinelle's walls began to crumble. Tears welled in her eyes, falling silently down her cheeks. Daniel did not move to wipe them away. He simply let her be, offering presence instead of pity. That quiet acceptance filled her with something she thought she had lost forever: dignity. The days that followed carried a new warmth. Arinelle walked through the fields with lighter steps. The burden of silence no longer crushed her chest. She began to laugh softly when Daniel told small stories. She hummed strange alien melodies while cooking. The farmhouse, once filled only with silence, now breathed with life. Yet beyond the farm, whispers grew louder. Villagers spoke of strange tracks near the woods, of glowing lights at night. They were afraid, and fear always turned into anger. Daniel warned Arinelle not to wander too far. She obeyed, but the fear of discovery never left her mind. One afternoon, a child from the village wandered near the farm. Arinelle saw him from the window. His small hands carried a broken toy, curiosity shining in his eyes. He stepped closer to the farmhouse door. Arinelle's heart raced. She backed away, hiding in the shadows. The boy knocked once, twice, but when Daniel stepped outside, the child quickly ran off. His toy dropped in the dirt. Arinelle stared at the toy, its broken while hanging loose. For a moment, she imagined holding it. She imagined what it would feel like to have a child of her own. Her chest ached with longing, but she quickly pushed the thought away. She reminded herself of the truth: she could never be a mother. That night, Daniel found her staring at the stars. "You are thinking again," he said gently. Arinelle sighed. "I wonder if the universe laughs at me. To give me the heart of a mother, but not the gift." Her voice broke. Daniel stood beside her, looking at the same stars. "The universe is cruel, yes," he said, "but it is also kind. Sometimes it gives us family in ways we never expect. His words stayed with her long after he went inside. Arinell touched her chest, feeling her heartbeat against her palm. She had spent so long believing she was cursed. Yet here, on this small farm, one human saw her not as cursed, but as whole. But peace was fragile, and the world beyond the farmhouse was stirring, unknown to Arinell and Daniel. A group of strangers had arrived in the village. They carried weapons and questions, and they were hunting for an alien who did not belong. Arinell did not yet know that her secret pain was only the beginning. Greater trials were waiting, and the bond she had formed with Daniel would soon face its greatest test. The peace of the farmhouse was fragile, and Arinell felt it breaking like thin glass. Daniel continued his days with quiet strength, tending to the fields and keeping her safe, but outside their walls the world was beginning to stir with questions. Rumors spread quickly among the villagers. Whispers of strange lights and alien wreckage. Fear grew like fire in dry grass. One evening, Daniel returned from the village with a heavy expression. He placed the supplies on the table and sat in silence. Arinell noticed the tension in his shoulders. "Something has changed," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "Strangers came to the village today. They asked questions. They said they were looking for an alien woman. They carried weapons." Arinell's chest tightened. Her mind raced with memories of her own people, hunters who would never forgive her for leaving. "Were they my kind?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "No, they were human, but soldiers, not farmers." His voice carried a weight of worry. "If they keep searching, they will come here." Fear returned to Arinell's heart like an old enemy. She walked to the window, her glowing eyes reflecting the night outside. "Perhaps I should leave," she whispered. "I will not bring danger to you." Daniel stood firmly. "No," he said. "You are not running again. Not while I am here." His words warmed her, but the fear did not vanish. That night, she dreamed of fire and exile. She dreamed of voices from her past calling her broken, useless. She awoke with tears on her face. Daniel found her at dawn sitting in the field, staring at the soil she had planted. "Do you regret staying?" he asked. Arinell shook her head slowly. "No, but I fear what will come." The threat grew closer. Days later, Arinell spotted movement near the woods. Figures in armor moving quietly. Scanning the land with devices, she quickly returned to the farmhouse, her voice shaking. "They're searching the fields." Daniel gripped his old rifle. Though it was little against soldiers, "We will not let them take you," he said. But danger did not only come from humans. Far away, among the stars, Arinell's own people had sent hunters to track her. To them, she was a shameful outcast, an alien woman who had refused her fate. They would not allow her to live freely among others. They believed she carried dishonor, and they wanted to erase her existence. Between two worlds, Arinell felt the walls closing in. At night, she stood at the window watching the horizon. Smoke from the village curled into the sky, and she knew it was only a matter of time. Daniel joined her, his voice steady. "Let them come. We will face them together." Her eyes softened. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk yourself for me?" Daniel's answer was simple, spoken with a calm strength. "Because no one deserves to live in fear, because you are not alone anymore." The words cut deep. She had wandered for years believing she had no place. Now, a human farmer stood against the world to protect her. Her chest ached with something she had long buried, a fragile feeling of belonging. The tension in the village grew worse. Children whispered about monsters in the woods. Adults gathered with torches. Some believed danger was near. Others believed fortune could be gained from capturing the alien. Daniel avoided the village, but Arinell could feel the storm building. One afternoon, a stone was thrown at the farmhouse door. Daniel stepped outside, but no one remained, only footsteps in the dirt. Arinell watched from inside, fear gripping her heart. "They know," she whispered. Daniel clenched his fists. "Let them hate. It changes nothing." But Arinell knew it did change something. The peace they had built was crumbling. Soon, they would have to fight for more than just safety. They would have to fight for their right to stay together. That night, she walked into the fields alone. The stars above shimmered cold and distant. She whispered to the sky, "I cannot run forever. I cannot hide forever. And as the wind moved through the crops, she felt the weight of her choice forming. She would no longer be the broken exile. She would stand. Behind her, Daniel's voice broke the silence. Whatever comes, Arinel, we face it side by side. She turned, her eyes glowing faintly with hope and fear, and though danger pressed in from all sides, she realized something powerful. She was not alone anymore. The hunters were coming. The soldiers were searching. The villagers were restless. The storm was near. But in Daniel's presence, she felt a strength greater than fear. She felt the beginning of family. The storm that Arinel feared finally reached the farmhouse. The whispers of the villagers had turned into suspicion, and the soldiers who had arrived in the town spread their search wider each day. Daniel's farm sat quietly on the edge of the land, but the silence felt heavy, like the air before thunder. One morning, Daniel found tracks near the barn. Heavy boots pressed deep into the soil, too organized to belong to villagers. He showed them to Arinel, her glowing eyes dimmed with worry. "The soldiers are close," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Yes, but there's more. These prints are not human. They are from your kind." Arinel froze. Her past had caught up with her. Hunters from her people had come. Their mission was clear, to drag her back in chains or to erase her forever. She gripped the edge of the table, her hands trembling. "They will not stop, Daniel. They will see me as a curse, and they will destroy anyone who stands with me." Daniel's voice was calm but fierce. "Then let them try." His words carried no fear, only determination. Arinel looked at him with disbelief. "You would fight against your own people, against mine for me?" Daniel met her gaze, his eyes steady. "Yes, because no one should be hunted for simply existing, because you are not just an alien to me, Arinel. You are family." Her chest ached at his words. For so long she had been unwanted. Now someone had chosen her. That night, the farm was surrounded. Shadows moved between the crops. Flickers of armor glinted under moonlight. Arinel recognized the symbols etched on their weapons. They were her people's hunters, merciless and cold. Alongside them moved human soldiers, driven by fear and suspicion. Two worlds united not by peace, but by hate for what they did not understand. Inside the farmhouse, Daniel loaded his old rifle. His hands were steady though the weapon was worn. Arinel stood beside him, her breath shaking. "We cannot win," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "Maybe not, but we can stand." The knock on the door was sharp. The voice outside barked, "Alien, come out, or the human dies." Arinel's heart raced. Her mind screamed at her to surrender, to protect Daniel, but another voice inside her, a voice she thought long dead, whispered, "Stand." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. His eyes were calm. "This is your choice, Arinel. Do you keep running, or do you fight for the life you want?" She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw not fear of her curse, but belief in her strength. Slowly, she stepped forward. Her voice rang out through the door, strong and clear. "I will not run. Not again. This is my home now, and he is my family." The silence outside shattered. Shouts filled the air. Boots pounded against the ground. The hunters moved to break down the door, but Daniel and Arinel were ready. The farmhouse, once a place of peace, became their fortress. The first strike came from the hunters. Blades of energy slashed through wood. Daniel fired back, the sound echoing across the fields. Arinel used the fragments of her alien knowledge, twisting wires into bursts of light that blinded their enemies. Together, human and alien fought side by side. Inside her heart, Arinel felt the change. No longer the broken exile, no longer the woman who wandered without purpose. She was something new. She was strong. She was chosen. And though the battle raged, her spirit burned brighter than fear. The fight lasted deep into the night. Torches lit the fields, weapons clashed, and voices shouted in rage. But every time Arinel faltered, Daniel's presence pulled her back. His steady voice whispered, "You are not alone." And with those words, she found strength to keep standing. By dawn, the hunters withdrew into the shadows. The soldiers retreated with them. The farm stood scarred but still standing. Smoke rose from broken beams. The fields were torn, But Daniel and Arinell remained, breathing, alive together. Arinell sank to her knees, exhaustion flooding her body, tears welled in her eyes. Daniel crouched beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You chose to stand," he said softly. She lifted her gaze, her voice a whisper. "For the first time in my life, I chose to live." And as the sun rose over the broken farmhouse, painting the land with light, Arinell knew something had changed forever. She was no longer a wanderer. She had chosen her place. She had chosen her family. The farmhouse stood scarred by the battle, but it still stood. Smoke drifted into the morning air. Broken wood and torn soil marked the fields. Yet inside those ruins, Arinell and Daniel remained, bruised, tired, but alive. For Arinell, survival had always meant running, but now, survival meant something more. It meant standing, it meant belonging, it meant being seen not as broken, but as whole. As she sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket Daniel had placed over her shoulders, she felt a warmth deeper than the flames. For the first time in her life, she felt at home. The villagers approached cautiously in the days that followed. At first, they kept their distance, whispering in fear. They had heard the battle, seen the glow of strange weapons across the fields. Some believed the alien was a danger. Others thought she had cursed the land. Yet when they saw Daniel alive, standing proudly beside her, their whispers softened. Children were the first to break the silence. One small boy carried the broken toy he had dropped before. He approached the farmhouse and stared at Arinell with wide eyes. Daniel stood nearby, ready to protect her, but Arinell crouched down and gently fixed the toy using a piece of wire. The boy's eyes lit up with joy, and he ran back to the village, shouting, "She helped me." That single moment began to change everything. Soon, other children came, curious and unafraid. They asked questions, touched her glowing skin, laughed at her strange accent. Arinell's heart trembled at their innocence. For years, she had longed to be close to children, and though she could never bear her own, these small hands reached for her without fear. Slowly, the adults followed, cautious but curious. They brought bread, tools, and questions. Daniel spoke firmly to them. "She is not a danger. She is my family." The villagers listened, and though not all trusted, some began to nod. Respect for Daniel turned into a quiet acceptance of Arinell. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Daniel and Arinell walked through the fields together. The crop she had helped plant now stood taller, green and alive. Daniel paused, placing a seed in her hand once more. "Look," he said, "this is what family means: to plant, to care, to grow together." Her throat tightened. She pressed the seed into the soil. Feeling the earth embrace it, she whispered, "I thought I could never give life, but here, I have grown more than I dreamed." Daniel's hand rested gently on her shoulder. "You gave me life too," he said. "You gave me more than I had before." Tears filled her eyes, but they were no longer tears of pain. They were tears of healing. She turned to him, her voice trembling. "I was cast away, but here I was found. I was told I was broken, but here I am whole." The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into seasons. The farmhouse was repaired, the fields thrived, and laughter returned to the land. Villagers no longer whispered in fear. Instead, children ran across the fields calling Arinell aunt. Daniel's quiet smile grew warmer with each passing day. Arinell, once the lonely wanderer, now stood in the heart of the family, not through blood, but through choice, through Daniel's courage. She had discovered something greater than survival. She had discovered love. And so, under the endless stars she once thought mocked her, Arinell lifted her gaze and whispered a vow. "I am no longer alone. I am home." The universe had taken much from her, but on a small farm at the edge of a quiet world, it had given her something greater than she ever imagined: a family, found in one human.